Welcome to Noir Street, a channel where every story carries a mystery or something even darker. Our community may be small, so please subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like and tell us in the comments which part of the world you're watching from. Now let's begin the story. Chapter 1. Archie's small favor. Archie came in smiling, which is always a bad sign when he calls something small. It wasn't merely the smile itself that put me on alert. It was the care with which it had been assembled. Archie Goodwin smiles the way other men choose neckties, according to the occasion, the audience, and the risk involved. This one was smooth, confident, and just restrained enough to suggest that he believed success was already assured. When Archie wears that expression, my role has been reduced, in his mind, to formal approval. He closed the front door with unnecessary delicacy, as if the brownstone were a sleeping patient, and hung his hat on its peg with a precision that bordered on ceremonial. Archie does not waste such care unless he is preparing to ask for something. He crossed the office with the unhurried stride of a man who has rehearsed his lines and stopped in front of my desk. "Good afternoon," he said. "It was adequate until you entered," I replied, still reading. "State your purpose." He took the chair opposite me without invitation, which was itself a declaration. Archie only sits when he intends to remain. He crossed one leg over the other, leaned back, and folded his hands loosely, the picture of comfort and good faith. "I've got a favor," he said, "very small." "No," I said. He blinked once. That was fast. "You finished speaking the moment you used that adjective," I told him. "Small favors do not require advance advertising." He sighed, but there was amusement in it. "You're getting sharper." "I am conserving time," I said. "Whose favor?" "A woman named Lydia Hart wants your name on a letter," he said. "That's it. Ink on paper, no interviews, no clients, no complications." I looked up then, fixing him with my full attention. "You are lying." "Now wait." "Not consciously," I continued, "but with enthusiasm that borders on fantasy. Why does she want my name?" "To open a vault," Archie said easily. "Charitable trust. Old money, trustees who move slower than a glacier with arthritis." "So it is leverage," I said, "not stationary." "She's trying to release funds for a church holiday drive," he added. "Food, clothing, a little warmth for people who could use it." "No," I said again. With finality, Archie grimaced. "I thought you might say that." "I do not lend my name to causes," I said. "I lend it to conclusions." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Father Caleb asked me to help. That stopped me." Father Caleb was not a close acquaintance, but he was one of the very few clergymen for whom I had developed a measure of respect. Thin, soft-spoken, with eyes that suggested endurance rather than inspiration, he had once come to us seeking truth, not charity. He had accepted the result without sermon, reproach, or self-congratulation. He did not exaggerate, and he did not waste words. I leaned back in my chair and studied Archie carefully. "You should have mentioned that first," I said. "I wanted to save it," Archie replied. "Structure, timing. You are not a dramatist." "True," he said cheerfully. "But I narrate." There was a pause. From upstairs came the steady hum of the climate system, maintaining my orchids at their precise degree of comfort. That sound, constant and reassuring, has always been one of the few noises I tolerate without irritation. Outside, traffic along West 35th Street muttered and complained, the city's endless argument with itself. "Tell me about Lydia Hart," I said. Archie relaxed, sensing progress. "Early 40s, educated, careful, comes from money that's been around long enough to develop Polish and suspicion in equal measure. She didn't want to trouble you directly." "She was wise," I said. "She's nervous," Archie went on, "but not jumpy. More like she's carrying something fragile and doesn't want to drop it." "That is not reassurance," I said. "It is diagnosis." He shrugged. "Father Caleb thinks she's sincere." "And you?" "I think it's harmless." "Harmless," I repeated. That word again. Archie smiled. You say it like an accusation. It is one, I said. Very well, I will read the letter, nothing more. He grinned broadly, and I noted the expression for later use against him. The letter arrived just before 6, hand-delivered by Lydia Hart herself. She was taller than I expected, with a posture that suggested discipline rather than stiffness. Her clothes were conservative but unmistakably expensive, chosen to avoid attention while quietly demanding respect. Her hair was dark brown, arranged with care, and her eyes were alert, eyes that measured rooms, people, and silences with equal efficiency. She did not sit until I gestured, and when she spoke it was with the practiced economy of someone accustomed to boardrooms rather than parlors. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Wolfe, she said. You may thank Mr. Goodwin, I replied. He is responsible. She glanced at Archie, uncertain, then smiled politely. Of course. The letter itself was well crafted, too well. It avoided emotional appeals and religious rhetoric, outlining instead the practical aims of the holiday drive: food distribution, winter clothing, temporary housing assistance. It listed projected costs and requested consideration by the trust. It named no beneficiaries beyond broad categories, no contractors, no suppliers. I read it once, then again, more slowly. Who drafted this? I asked. A lawyer, she said promptly. Whose? Mine. There was the slightest hesitation before she answered, a fraction of a second too long. This letter, I said, is deliberately vague. She inclined her head. Discretion is necessary at this stage. Discretion, I said, or concealment. She met my gaze steadily. Everything about this drive is proper. That, I said, is an assertion, not proof. Her fingers tightened around her handbag. I can provide documentation. You have not, I pointed out. She took a breath. The trust requires confidentiality until approval is granted. How convenient, I said. Archie cleared his throat. Mrs. Hart is trying to help people, Wolfe. Intentions, I said, are irrelevant. Results are everything. There was a moment of silence, heavy but controlled. Lydia Hart did not fidget. That impressed me, but it did not reassure me. People who remain composed under pressure are either well-trained or deeply committed. Sometimes both. I considered my options. Refusal would be simple. Signing would be irritating. But irritation, properly applied, can be instructive, and Father Caleb's name still weighed on the scale. I will sign, I said at last. Archie blinked. Lydia Hart's relief was immediate, though she tried to conceal it. With conditions, I added. Of course, she said quickly. My letter will state only that I have examined the stated purpose of the drive and found it reasonable, I said. It will make no guarantees, no endorsements beyond that narrow scope. It will be used only for the trustees of your trust. If my name appears elsewhere, I will regard it as an act of provocations. She nodded. Agreed. Archie drafted the letter under my supervision. I dictated every word. Precision matters. When it was finished, I signed my name with deliberate care, aware that I was attaching myself to a chain of events whose length I could not yet measure. At that moment, the dinner gong sounded from the kitchen, a sonorous note of civilized order. Fritz's timing, as always, was impeccable. If you will excuse me, I said, rising. I dine at 7. Of course, Lydia Hart said, standing quickly. She thanked us again, shook Archie's hand, and left without lingering. The door closed softly behind her. Archie watched it for a moment, then turned to me. That went smoother than I expected. So did many disasters, I said. At first, he frowned. You really think this is trouble? I do not sign letters without consequence, I said. When I do, it is because the consequence is unavoidable. You think she's hiding something. I think, I said carefully, that she is standing at the edge of something she does not fully understand. Archie considered that, and now we're standing with her. Precisely, I said. He grinned. You always did like a challenge. I like order, I corrected him. Challenges are merely disorder demanding attention. I went upstairs to dinner, but even Fritz's flawless cooking failed to dispel the faint irritation that had lodged itself beneath my thoughts. A pin under the fingernail, small but persistent. I have learned to respect such sensations. They are seldom without cause, and they rarely end well. Chapter 2. The corpse arrives early. Night fell hard and fast, and it brought a body with it. It did not arrive politely, nor did it show the decency to wait until morning. It came barging into my evening like an uninvited guest who mistakes intrusion for entitlement. Fritz had just removed the dinner service, roast pheasant executed with his customary precision, and I was settling into that rare and civilized interval when digestion and reflection coexist peacefully, when the telephone downstairs rang. Archie, who had been lingering with the evening paper, folded more for posture than for reading, reached it before the second ring. He listened without speaking, which alone was enough to annoy me. When he hung up, he remained standing there for a moment, staring at the receiver as if it had insulted him personally. That pause told me what enthusiasm would have obscured. "Well?" I demanded. "That," Archie said, finally turning to face me, "was Inspector Kramer. He's feeling seasonal." "I do not observe his seasons," I said. "Explain." "There's been a death," Archie replied. "Daniel Hart." I remained still. Fritz's footsteps faded on the stairs. The brownstone seemed to contract slightly, as though it, too, had recognized the name. "Clarify," I said. "Found behind St. Bridget's Hall," Archie said. "Face, down in the snow, very dead." The words settled with uncomfortable precision. Daniel Hart, husband to Lydia Hart, whose carefully phrased letter bore my signature, ink barely dry. I had known consequences would follow. I had not expected them to arrive wrapped in frost and flashing police lights. "Cause?" I asked. "Undetermined," Archie said. Kramer didn't sound curious. He sounded territorial, like the body had personally offended him. "Of course," I said, "and my name." "He worked it in," Archie said, not elegantly. Archie blinked. "You're going out?" "Yes," I said. "This has ceased to be academic. He didn't invite you." "I am not attending socially," I said. "I am responding to contamination." That satisfied him. He fetched his coat and hat without argument, his movements brisk and subdued. Archie senses inevitability the way some men sense weather. St. Bridget's Hall sat on a narrow side street, dressed in modest holiday lights. White bulbs strung with the hopeful restraint of people who fear excess, but crave cheer. Snow had begun falling earlier in the evening, light but persistent, the sort that pretends innocence while obscuring detail. It softened curbs, muffled footsteps, and provided criminals with plausible deniability. A patrol car blocked the alley behind the hall, its red and blue lights flashing soundlessly against the brick walls. Two uniformed officers stood near the rear door, stamping their feet and pretending not to stare. Their pretense evaporated when they recognized us. Inspector Kramer emerged from the alley like a disgruntled bear in an overcoat, his bulk amplified by irritation. "Well," he said, planting himself squarely in front of me. "If it isn't Nero Wolfe. Funny how you keep turning up where things go wrong." "I assure you, Inspector," I said, "the coincidence offends me as much as it does you." He snorted. "We find a body, and suddenly half the witnesses are talking about your name like it's part of the decorations." "That," I replied, "suggests notoriety, not guilt." "Come see," he said curtly, jerking his head toward the alley. Daniel Hart lay near the back steps, his body twisted at an awkward angle that suggested collapse rather than struggle. His dark wool coat was dusted with snow, already beginning to blend with the ground beneath him. One arm was trapped beneath his torso. The other lay outstretched, fingers half curled, as if he had reached for balance and found none. I studied him carefully without approaching too closely. "No visible blood?" I observed. "Doesn't mean a thing," Kramer said. "Plenty of ways to die tidy." I nodded. "When was he last seen alive?" "Depends who you ask," Kramer replied. sometime between 8:30 and 9. Father Caleb stood a few steps away, wrapped in a thin coat that did little to combat the cold. His face was pale, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion and shock. When he saw me, relief flickered briefly, then faded into concern. "Mr. Wolfe," he said softly, "thank you for coming." "I did not come to console," I said. "Tell me what you know." He swallowed. "Daniel left the hall alive. I'm certain. He spoke with me at the door." "What time?" I asked. "About 8:30, Father Caleb said. He seemed tense, but not ill. He said he was going home." Kramer folded his arms. "We've got witnesses who say Hart argued with his wife earlier in the evening." Father Caleb winced. They disagreed about the drive, about money. Voices were raised. "Threats?" I asked. "No," the priest said quickly. "Nothing like that." Archie crouched near the body, careful to keep his distance. "Snow's disturbed," he noted, "but not much sign of a struggle." "Snow's been falling steady," Kramer said. "Covers things fast." I scanned the alley, footprints leading away. "Too many," Kramer said. "Volunteers' stuff. Looky, Luz, we're sorting." "And Mrs. Hart?" I asked. "Notified," Kramer said. "She's on her way." As if summoned, headlights appeared near the front of the hall. A car pulled up, abruptly, and Lydia Hart stepped out. She was wrapped in a dark coat, her posture rigid, her movements slowed by disbelief. When she saw the police lights, she stopped as though the scene itself had struck her. "You don't want to see this." She stared at him, eyes wide and unfocused. "Daniel." Archie nodded once. She made a small sound, not a scream, not a sob, something caught between disbelief and pain. Father Caleb hurried to her side, steadying her as her knees threatened to give way. "He said he was going home," she whispered. "He promised." Kramer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hart, we'll need to ask you some questions." She nodded mechanically, her composure brittle but intact. I watched her carefully. Grief can be extravagant or restrained. Hers was the latter. No collapse, no hysteria. Just shock held in check by discipline. That impressed me. It did not reassure me. A medical examiner arrived shortly thereafter, performed a brief examination, and murmured to Kramer in a low voice. I caught fragments. "No obvious trauma, possible cardiac tox screen needed." Kramer glanced at me displeased. "We'll know more later." "I await enlightenment," I said. There was nothing more to be gained by lingering. The body would speak later, under better lighting and colder scrutiny. Back in the car, Archie drove in silence for several blocks, the snow ticking softly against the windshield. "So," he said finally, "my small favor just turned into a homicide." "Yes," I said, "and I dislike escalation." "You think he was killed?" "I think," I said, "that men do not conveniently expire in public alleys immediately after heated disputes, unless assisted." Archie grimaced. "Kramer's going to lean hard." "He always does," I said, "but now he has motive, and we're standing right in the middle." "Yes," I said, "which is precisely where I prefer to stand, provided I can see all sides." Snow continued to fall, soft and relentless, erasing tracks and intentions alike. Somewhere behind us, St. Bridget's Hall glowed with borrowed cheer, its holiday lights indifferent to the body cooling in its shadow. Archie glanced at me. "You regret signing that letter?" "No," I said. "Regret implies an alternative." "And this," I said, "is obligation." I leaned back, already separating facts from ornament. Archie's small favor had become my problem, and I dislike problems that arrive early, especially when they wear holiday ribbon, quote, goodwill, and insist on being taken seriously. Chapter 3. A priest, under pressure Father Caleb, arrived at the brownstone the next morning, carrying his fear the way careful men carry glass. Close to the body, wrapped in discretion, and still plainly visible. Archie admitted him and guided him into the office while I remained seated behind my desk, observing the approach the way a botanist observes a specimen that may or may not be diseased. The priest moved with measured caution, as though the carpet itself might give way beneath his feet. He smelled faintly of incense and cold air, and beneath that was another, sharper note, the stale odor of a night without sleep, when the mind circles the same thought until it frays. "Good morning, Father," Archie said, with a warmth he does not waste on casual callers. Father Caleb inclined his head. He attempted a smile and abandoned it halfway. "Good morning." He looked at me then, really looked, assessing the chair opposite my desk as though uncertain it would support him. When he sat, he clasped his hands together tightly, fingers interlocked, knuckles pale. He did not remove his coat. "You asked to see me," he said. "No," I replied. "You asked to see me, I permitted it." He nodded, accepting the correction without offense. "Yes, Mr. Wolfe. I didn't know where else to go." "That," I said, "explains your presence, not your purpose. Begin again." He drew in a careful breath, then another. Daniel Hart threatened me. Archie's eyebrows rose. Mine did not. "When?" I asked. "Last night," Father Caleb said. "Before the event ended. Before he died." "Threatened you how?" Archie asked. "Not physically," the priest said quickly. "Never that. He threatened exposure." I leaned back slightly. "Exposure of what precisely?" Father Caleb hesitated. This hesitation was different from the others. Controlled, deliberate, weighed. "You may speak freely," I said. "I am already entangled." He nodded slowly. "Daniel said there was something wrong with the charity fund, with how the money was being handled." "How?" I asked. "He said the funds were being moved," Father Caleb replied. "Not stolen. He was careful about that word, but redirected temporarily, passed through an auxiliary account before being restored." "To what end?" I asked. "He didn't say." The priest replied, "That it violated the spirit, if not the letter, of the trust's charter." "And whom did he accuse?" Archie asked. Father Caleb's eyes flicked briefly toward the door, then returned to me. "His wife." Archie let out a slow breath. I remained motionless. "Continue," I said. "They argued earlier in the evening," Father Caleb went on. "Not quietly. Daniel was angry, angrier than I'd ever seen him. Lydia was controlled. They asked for privacy, and I respected that. Later, Daniel came to me alone. He was agitated," Father Caleb replied. "Angry, yes, but also frightened. He said there were people involved who would not forgive interference." "People," I repeated, plural. "Yes. Did he name them?" Archie asked. "No," the priest said, "only that they were influential, that they had much to lose." "Influential people," Archie murmured. "That narrows it to everyone with a checkbook." Father Caleb flinched. "He demanded a private conversation," he continued. "In the back corridor, near the storage rooms. He said there were things I needed to know, and you agreed," I said. "Yes. Why?" I asked. "Because if wrongdoing involved St. Bridget's Church," Father Caleb said earnestly, "I had a duty to hear it." "Duty," I said. "An excellent motivator. Often fatal." He did not smile. "He told me the funds were being used as collateral," the priest continued. "Short-term loans, quiet ones, the money would return," he said. "But the risk was borne by whom?" I asked. "The charity," Father Caleb said, "and the people it was meant to help." "Did he present evidence?" Archie asked. "No," the priest admitted. "Only assertions. Assertions supported by emotion," I said. "Dangerous, but not persuasive." I told him that, Father Caleb said. I said accusations required proof, that threats were improper, that if he believed there was wrongdoing, he should come forward formally. "And his response?" I asked. "He became more agitated," the priest said. "He said time was short, that if he waited, others would be ruined." "Others," I said. "Did he specify? Number? Did he say how he learned of this?" I asked. "No," Father Caleb said. "Only that he had seen documents. He wouldn't show them to me." I steepled my fingers. Convenient. He said he didn't trust anyone, the priest added. Not even me. He said he needed to think. What happened next? I asked. He left, Father Caleb said. Abruptly, he said he needed air. He went toward the rear exit. And you? I asked. I stayed, he said. For perhaps 2 minutes. I was shaken. I prayed. Archie shifted in his chair. And then, I said. Then I heard a scream, Father Caleb said, his voice tightening. From the alley. I ran out with the others. And found Daniel Hart dead, I said. Yes. I studied him carefully. His fear was genuine, his distress sincere. His voice wavered at the right moments. But sincerity is not a guarantee of innocence, it is merely an absence of rehearsal. You did not follow him, I said. Number. You did not see anyone else enter the corridor, I said. Number. You did not hear another voice, I said. Number. Archie leaned forward. Father, you understand how this sounds? Yes, Father Caleb said miserably. That is why I came here first. Did Daniel Hart accuse you? I asked. He looked up sharply. Number. Never. He trusted me. Trust, I said, is a sentiment. It is not a defense. Silence settled over the room, heavy but controlled. Outside, a delivery truck backfired. Upstairs, the climate system hummed steadily, maintaining the orchids at their proper level of comfort, indifferent to human anxiety. Father, I said at last, did you touch Daniel Hart at any point after your conversation? No, he said instantly. Did you give him anything to drink? I asked. Numbered. Did you give him anything at all? Archie asked. No, Father Caleb repeated. Nothing. Did you know whether he suffered from a heart condition? Archie asked. No, the priest said. At least, he never told me. Did you know he was taking medication? I asked. Number. Did you see him consume alcohol that evening? Archie asked. No, Father Caleb said. He avoided it. He was focused. I nodded slowly. Father, I said, you have done the correct thing in coming here. Relief flickered in his eyes. That does not mean you are safe, I continued. The relief vanished, replaced by resignation. What should I do? He asked. You should do nothing, I said. You should answer questions honestly. You should not attempt to protect anyone, yourself included. I won't, he said quietly. And you will inform me immediately, I added. If you remember anything else, no matter how trivial it seems. He nodded. When he left, Archie closed the door carefully and leaned against it, exhaling. Well, he said, he's scared clean through. Yes, I agreed, which makes him dangerous. Archie frowned. Dangerous how? Fear sharpens memory in some places and erases it in others, I said. It can manufacture certainty and destroy sequence. Minutes vanish. You think he's hiding something? I think, I said, that panic can obscure as effectively as deceit. Archie considered that. And Daniel Hart threatened exposure without preparation, I said. That is either courage or recklessness. Often they are indistinguishable. And Lydia? She had motive, I said. So did anyone who benefited from the arrangement he described, real or imagined. I rose and went to the window, looking out at West 35th Street. The city moved with admirable indifference, taxis and pedestrians, unconcerned with moral crises occurring behind drawn curtains. Charity, I said, is an excellent camouflage. People stop asking questions. Archie nodded slowly. And somebody didn't want Daniel asking any more. Precisely, I said. I returned to my desk and opened a fresh folder. The case is beginning to define itself, I said. Not as a tragedy, but as an equation. Archie smiled thinly. And equations have answers. Yes, I said. And I intend to find this one before the police settle for a simpler solution. The priest had brought fear into my office. Fear leaves traces, and I intended to follow them, methodically, without sentiment, and without mercy for anyone who believed charity could be used as a shield. Chapter 4. Lydia's Fine Lies If Grief Were a Garment. Lydia Hart wore hers like it had been tailored by a professional who charged by the hour and took pride in the fit. Archie told me that later, but I could hear it in his voice when he phoned from her townhouse. An undertone that meant he had stopped listening for sympathy and started listening for structure. Lydia Hart did not collapse, did not wander, did not forget where she was. She performed grief, the way capable people perform everything else, with control, restraint, and an eye on the effect. Her townhouse stood on East 73rd, narrow and dignified, with a brass knocker that had been polished recently enough to show effort. Archie arrived precisely on time and was admitted by Lydia herself. No maid, no friend hovering nearby, no well-meaning relative. Either she preferred privacy or she preferred control. Often they are the same thing. She wore black, of course, but not the theatrical variety. The cut was severe, the fabric expensive, the jewelry minimal. Her face was pale, her eyes reddened, just enough to authenticate sorrow without impairing function. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." Archie shook it. "Sorry for your loss." She inclined her head, accepting the sentiment, the way one accepts a receipt. "Please, sit." The living room was immaculate, too immaculate. Nothing disturbed, nothing out of place. A house that had been arranged for inspection, not habitation. Archie noted the details automatically. Framed abstracts on the walls, fresh flowers arranged without enthusiasm. A side table cleared of anything personal enough to invite questions. She sat across from him, back straight, hands folded. She did not cry. "I assume the police have been thorough," she said. "They will be," Archie replied. "Eventually." She nodded. "I've answered their questions. Then you won't mind answering a few more." Her lips tightened briefly. "I suppose not." Archie leaned back slightly. "Tell me about Daniel." Her eyes dropped for a moment, calculated, Archie would later say, and then rose again, steady. "He was difficult," she said. "Unpredictable." "In what way?" "He drank," she said quickly. "Too much. He could be charming, but when he drank," she let the sentence trail off. "Violent," Archie supplied. She hesitated. "Emotionally." Archie raised an eyebrow. "Only emotionally." She shifted in her chair. "He never hit me, if that's what you mean. But he was cruel. He accused me of things. He imagined conspiracies, like the charity fund." Her head snapped up. "He had no involvement with that." "That was fast," Archie said mildly. "It's true," she insisted. "Daniel had no head for numbers. He left finances to me. But he attended meetings." "Yes," she said, "as a courtesy." Archie nodded. "And he drank at those meetings?" "No," she said. "He was usually sober there."
Usually.
She frowned. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," Archie said, "just keeping the timeline straight." She took a breath. "Daniel was drunk that night." "According to whom?" "To me," she said. "I saw him earlier. He smelled of whiskey." Archie glanced at his notes. "Father Caleb says he didn't drink at the event." Her eyes flickered. "Then he drank before." "Earlier you said he became unpredictable when he drank," Archie said. "Now you're saying he was unpredictable that night because he drank." She stiffened. "Is there a difference?" "There can be," Archie said. She waved it away. "Daniel was angry. He accused me of misusing funds. It was absurd." "Yet you knew the vault combination," Archie said lightly. The room changed not much, just enough. "That's habit," she said quickly. "I've handled the trust's logistics for years. But Daniel never handled the money." "Number yet you discussed moving funds with him?" "No, I—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "He accused, I denied." Archie nodded. "Did you ever move money through auxiliary accounts?" Her chin lifted. "Absolutely not. Never. Never." "Then how did you know the auxiliary account existed?" Her eyes narrowed. "What auxiliary account?" Archie smiled. "The one Daniel mentioned to Father Caleb. There it was. The first real crack, not hysteria, not rage, just a tightening, a calculation, a sudden awareness of terrain shifting underfoot. He imagined it, she said. Daniel imagined many things. Imagined enough to threaten exposure, Archie said. He was unstable, she snapped. He wanted attention. From whom? From me, from anyone. Archie let the silence stretch. Lydia Hart filled it with composure, but the effort was visible now, like a muscle beginning to tremble. Mrs. Hart, Archie said finally. Did Daniel ever threaten to go to the press? She swallowed. He said he might. And you weren't concerned. I knew no one would believe him. Why? Because he had no proof. Archie leaned forward, and if he had, she looked away. Mrs. Hart, Archie said gently, when my employer signed that letter, did it worry you? Her head snapped back. Why would it? Because it put his name on your process, Archie said. And Nero Wolfe's name has a way of drawing attention. Her mouth tightened. I needed credibility. For a charity drive, Archie said. Or for something else. She stood abruptly. I think this interview is over. Archie rose as well, unhurried. One more thing. She hesitated. When Daniel left the hall, Archie said, did you know where he was going? She stared at him. Home. Did you speak to him after that? Number did anyone? I don't know. Archie nodded. Thank you for your time. As he left, Lydia Hart remained standing, her hands clenched at her sides. She did not follow him to the door. When Archie returned to the brownstone, he brought the townhouse with him, not physically, but structurally. He laid it out in my office the way an engineer lays out a fault line. She's lying, he said flatly. Of course, I replied. About what? That's the interesting part, Archie said. She changes the story depending on the pressure. First Daniel was abusive, then unpredictable, then drunk. But the details don't line up. And the money, I said. She knows more than she admits, Archie said. She knew the vault combination like it was muscle memory. And when I mentioned your letter, yes, she flinched, Archie said. Not fear, calculation. I nodded. Then my name was not a courtesy. No, Archie agreed. It was a shield, or a lever. Or bait, I said. Archie frowned. You think she wanted trouble? I think, I said carefully, that Lydia Hart needed legitimacy quickly, and when her husband threatened exposure, legitimacy became urgent, and when he died, Archie said slowly, it became dangerous. Precisely, I said. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, fitting the pieces together. Daniel Hart had threatened exposure. Lydia Hart had needed my name. Father Caleb had been placed squarely between them, and somewhere behind the charity, money had moved in a way that required silence. Grief, I said, is easy to fake. Consistency is not. Archie smiled thinly. So what's next? Next, I said, we determine whether Lydia Hart is lying to protect herself or lying to protect someone else. And if it's the second, then, I said, opening a fresh page in the folder, we find out who believes charity is a suitable disguise for murder. The lies were fine, carefully made, expertly worn, but they were still lies. And lies, no matter how elegant, always fray at the seams. Chapter 5. The hatred gets loud. Inspector Kramer arrived in my office with the air of a man hauling a net through dirty water and resenting every object it caught. He did not knock. He rarely does when he believes indignation confers authority. Archie admitted him, stepped aside with professional neutrality, and closed the door with care that was almost affectionate. When Kramer barges in, the house itself seems to stiffen. Kramer removed his hat, glared at it as though it had betrayed him, and dropped it onto Archie's desk. Well, I said, you are disrupting my morning. You're disrupting my homicide, Kramer growled. So I guess we're even. Archie leaned against the wall, arms folded, expression alert but unamused. His grin, the one he uses when irritation is theoretical, was conspicuously absent. That's a new tone, Archie said. Did you come to share, or just splash around? Kramer ignored him and fixed his eyes on me. We found something in Daniel Hart's pocket. I did not respond. A scrap of paper, Kramer continued, torn, folded small, like it mattered. And I said. And on it, Kramer said, savoring the moment with unprofessional relish, was your name, your address, and a time. Archie straightened. Just a little. I remained still. Which time? 7:15, Kramer said. Tonight, written in Hart's hand. Silence settled into the room, heavy but orderly upstairs. The orchids hummed along, oblivious to the sudden shift in balance. That, I said calmly, is inconvenient. Inconvenient, Kramer barked. That's one word for it. Another is interesting. Another is suspicious. Archie pushed off the wall. You're saying Daniel Hart was planning to come see Wolfe. I'm saying that's what it looks like, Kramer snapped. And I'm saying someone wanted it to look that way. I inclined my head slightly. At least we agree on the second part. Kramer scowled. You always do this. You act like the answer's obvious, and I'm the one trailing behind. Well, let me spell it out for you, Wolfe. A dead man with your name in his pocket is my problem, and so are you. I have always been your problem, I said. You persist. Archie cut in, voice sharper than usual. Let's get something straight. Daniel Hart never called, never wrote, never made an appointment. So you say, Kramer replied. So my secretary says, Archie said, and she keeps records. Kramer snorted. Records can be wrong. So can scraps of paper, Archie said. Especially torn ones. Kramer reached into his coat and produced an evidence envelope, waving it like a flag of conquest. Handwriting's his, he said. Confirmed, no doubt about it. Handwriting can be genuine and still misleading, I said. Context is everything. You got context, Kramer demanded. Yes, I said. Daniel Hart had a reason to want to see me, and someone else had a reason to make it appear that he did. Kramer's eyes narrowed. You suggesting he didn't write it? No, I said. I am suggesting he wrote it earlier, for reasons unrelated to his death, and someone ensured it was found. Archie nodded slowly. Daniel threatens exposure. He knows Wolfe's reputation. He jots down the address, then someone uses that fact. Kramer looked from Archie to me. Or he was coming to see you, got killed instead, and now I'm standing in the middle of a nice, neat motive. I leaned forward. Inspector, if Daniel Hart had intended to visit me, he would have done so properly. He would have contacted my office. He did neither. Maybe he changed his mind, Kramer said. Daniel Hart, I replied, did not strike me as a man who did anything without rehearsal. Kramer hesitated. It was brief, but it was there. And the time? Archie asked. 7:15. Kramer nodded. That's right. Interesting, Archie said. Because he was still at St. Bridget's Church then. Kramer's mouth tightened. According to some witnesses. According to Father Caleb, Archie said, and several volunteers. Kramer waved that away. Timelines shift. They do, I agreed, but not without effort. Kramer leaned on my desk, palms flat. Here's what I know. Daniel Hart argues with his wife. He threatens exposure. He winds up dead. And in his pocket is a note pointing straight at you. That's not subtle, Wolfe. No, I said. It is theatrical. He straightened. You accusing someone of planting it? Yes. Who? That, I said, is your job. Mine is to determine why. Archie frowned. Inspector, did the paper show signs of wear? Kramer paused. What? Creases, Archie said. Oil from handling, that kind of thing. Kramer scowled. Why? Because if Daniel wrote it recently, it should show fresh handling, Archie said. If it was written earlier and kept, it would show wear. Kramer hesitated again. Longer this time. We're checking that, he muttered. Of course you are, I said. He glared at me. You enjoying this? No, I said. I am annoyed. That's new, Archie said dryly. Kramer picked up his hat. You're not going anywhere, Wolfe, not without my say. So. I rarely go anywhere, I replied. Your concern is misplaced. He turned at the door. If this turns out to be more than a coincidence. It will, I said. His jaw tightened. He left without another word. Archie stood silent for a moment after the door closed. Then he exhaled. Well, he said, that got loud fast. Yes, I said. Hatred usually does when it lacks precision. Archie looked at me, serious now. Someone wanted it to look like Daniel came to you, or died because he meant to. Yes, I said, which means they expected me to be visible. And annoyed, Archie added. I regarded him. Your grin has vanished. Good, he said. Because this just got personal. I nodded. That scrap of paper was not a clue. It was a message. To you, Archie said. To me, I agreed. And to the police. Archie frowned. You think it's Lydia? Possibly, I said. Possibly not. The lie is too blunt for her style. Father Caleb. No, I said. Too frightened. Fear is messy. Then who? Someone, I said slowly, who wanted to frame intention rather than action, someone who understands reputation. Archie's eyes sharpened. Someone who knew your name would poison the well. Yes, I said, and someone who underestimated my dislike of being used. Archie managed a thin smile. He'll regret that. Eventually, I said, but first, we identify who benefited most from Daniel Hart never making that appointment. I leaned back, steepling my fingers. The hatred had grown loud, clumsy, and impatient. That was useful. Quiet enemies are dangerous. Loud ones make mistakes. And someone, somewhere, had just made one big enough to echo. Chapter 6. The missing donation ledger. The donation ledger disappeared with manners. That was how Owen Pike described it. Standing in my office with his hat clutched in both hands, and a look on his face usually reserved for men who have misplaced something essential and are hoping it will turn up on its own out of embarrassment. The ledger had not done him that courtesy. It didn't look disturbed, Pike said for the third time. That's what bothers me. If someone had broken in, if there'd been a mess, I'd understand it. But it was just gone. I regarded him in silence. Owen Pike was St. Bridget's church treasurer, a thin man with careful eyes, and the posture of someone who had spent his life avoiding unnecessary attention. His suit was conservative to the point of apology, and his hands bore the faint ink stains of a man who still trusted paper. Objects do not wander, I said finally. People move them. Yes, of course, Pike said quickly. I only meant, I know what you meant, I said. You meant that the absence was too neat. He nodded vigorously. Exactly. Archie had returned from St. Bridget's an hour earlier, with that particular look he gets when order has been manufactured, rather than maintained. He was leaning against the edge of my desk now, arms folded, eyes on Pike. Tell it again, Archie said. Slowly, Pike swallowed. The ledger is kept in my office. Locked drawer. Always locked. Yesterday morning, it was there. Last night, after everything. I went back to check. The drawer was unlocked. The ledger was gone. No forced entry, Archie said. No, Pike agreed. The door was locked. The window secure. And the lock? Archie asked. Clean, Pike said. Too clean. Archie glanced at me. No scratches, no tension marks. Either it was picked by a professional with a conscience, or it was opened with a key. Keys, I said. How many? Pike hesitated. That was interesting. 3, he said. Mine, Father Caleb's and Mrs. Hart's. I felt the faint stir of irritation that accompanies symmetry. I dislike small circles, I said. They are efficient. Pike shifted his weight. Mrs. Hart insisted on having a key. She said it was necessary for coordination. Did you object? Archie asked. I did, Pike said, briefly. But she was persuasive. Persuasive how? Archie asked. She said the trust Expected transparency, Pike said, and that delays could cost people help. I nodded. A familiar argument. Archie pushed off the desk. Show me the office. St. Bridget's was quieter in daylight. The echoes of the holiday event already reduced to scuffed floors and faint traces of pine. Pike unlocked the treasurer's office and stepped aside. Archie entered first, pausing just inside the door. Too tidy. The desk was cleared with precision, the wastebasket was empty, the chair was centered. Nothing had been disturbed, because nothing had been allowed to be out of place. Archie opened the drawer where the ledger had been kept. Empty. No rummaging, Archie said. No panic. Whoever took it knew exactly what they wanted. And when? I said. Pike nodded. Yes. Archie examined the lock, then the door frame. No forced entry, he said again, which means access. He turned to Pike. When was the last time you saw the ledger? Yesterday morning, Pike said. I was reconciling donations from the event. And you didn't take it home, Archie said. Never, Pike said quickly. I don't mix church business with my house. Good, Archie said. Someone else did. We left Pike to his anxiety and returned to the brownstone with a problem that had finally decided to show its teeth. The ledger mattered, Archie said as soon as we were inside. Enough to risk stealing it after a homicide. Yes, I agreed. And it was taken cleanly, which suggests urgency without chaos. Lydia, Archie asked. Possibly, I said. She had access, motive, and familiarity. And Father Caleb. Yes, I said. He also had access. But he does not strike me as a man who erases records. Archie frowned. Fear can do funny things. Fear makes people sloppy, I said. This was not sloppy. Archie nodded slowly. So someone wanted those numbers gone before anyone else saw them. Precisely, I said, which suggests the ledger contained confirmation, not speculation. And Daniel Hart, Archie asked. Daniel Hart, I said, was threatening exposure without protection. That implies he believed the evidence already existed. Archie's mouth tightened. And now it doesn't. Not in that form, I said. He paced once, then stopped. 3 keys, 3 people, 1 ledger, and 1 murderer, I said, perhaps. Archie looked at me. You said you hate small circles. Yes, I said, because the murderer always hides comfortably inside them, believing proximity is camouflage. Archie smiled faintly. So which one's too comfortable? I do not yet know, I said. But the ledger did not walk away politely. It was escorted. And whoever escorted it, Archie said, knew exactly what they were doing. Yes, I agreed, which narrows the field considerably. I turned back to my desk and opened my notebook. The ledger is gone, I said, but its absence is louder than its presence ever was. Archie nodded. Someone just told us what matters most. Indeed, I said, and now we listen carefully to what they tried to silence. The circle had closed. The hatred had grown organized, and somewhere between charity and theft, the truth was waiting, impatient, precise, and unimpressed by good intentions. Chapter 7. The choir director's secret. Archie has always maintained that people tell the truth most readily when they believe it will inconvenience them the least. It is a theory he has tested repeatedly, usually with success, and it was very much on his mind when he went to see June Weller. He told me later that she answered the door herself, which he took as the first useful fact of the afternoon. People with secrets often arrange buffers, assistants, rehearsals, excuses. June Weller had none. She stood there in a wool sweater and sensible skirt, hair pinned back with careless precision, eyes alert and appraising. Mr. Goodwin, she said. I wondered when someone would come. That, Archie said, was the second useful fact. June Weller was the choir director at St. Bridget's, a woman in her late 30s with a soft voice trained for harmonies and a gaze sharp enough to cut glass. She spoke gently, but there was nothing tentative about her opinions. Archie has learned to respect that combination. I don't have much time, she said, stepping aside to let him in, but I suppose this won't wait. No, Archie agreed. It won't. Her apartment was small, neat without being sterile. Sheet music was stacked everywhere, in orderly piles, annotated in pencil. The kind of order that comes from discipline, not obsession. Archie sat where she indicated and waited. June Weller did not rush. She poured tea, set the cups down carefully, and then sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. "You're here about Daniel Hart," she said. "Yes," Archie said. "You knew him." "I did," she said, "better than most people think." "That usually means trouble," Archie said. She smiled faintly. "It usually does." He leaned back slightly. "When did you last see him?" "The night he died," June said. "Twice." "Twice," Archie repeated. "That's more than coincidence." She nodded. "The first time was earlier in the afternoon. He came to St. Bridget's church office." "To see Father Caleb?" Archie asked. "No," she said, "to see the files." Archie's eyebrows lifted. "Just like that?" "He didn't announce it," June said. "But I saw him. He was careful. Too careful. The kind of careful people get when they know they shouldn't be doing what they're doing." "And you didn't stop him?" Archie said. "No," she replied. "I watched." "Why?" "Because I already suspected something was wrong," June said calmly, "and Daniel was looking in the right direction." Archie waited. Silence properly applied is one of his better tools. "He was investigating the charity fund," June continued. "Not officially. Quietly, he asked me questions weeks ago about access, about schedules, about who handled what." "And you answered," Archie said. "Yes," she said, "because I didn't trust the answers he was getting elsewhere." Archie nodded slowly. "Did he find anything?" "Yes." "What?" "He photographed documents," June said. "In St. Bridget's church office." Archie straightened. "Photographed?" "Yes," she said. "Ledger pages, transfer slips, correspondence. He used his phone?" Archie asked. "No," she said, "but I saw him do it. He wasn't subtle." "And you didn't tell anyone?" "No," she said, "because I wanted to know how far it went." Archie studied her. Her hands were folded loosely, unmoving. Not clenched, not restless, steady. "Who else knew?" Archie asked. "Owen Pike," she said. That landed exactly where Archie expected it to. "You're sure?" he said. "Yes," June said. "Daniel argued with him that afternoon loudly." "Where?" Archie asked. Door closed, voices raised. Daniel accused him of manipulating donation timing. Pike accused Daniel of paranoia. "And Lydia Hart?" Archie asked. June's mouth tightened. She knew something was wrong. Whether she knew exactly what, I can't say. "But she was involved," Archie said. "Yes," June said. "At least administratively. You don't move money through church accounts without cooperation." Archie leaned forward. "Did Daniel say what he planned to do?" "Yes," June said. "He said he was going to expose it, that he'd already contacted someone who couldn't be ignored." Archie kept his face neutral. "Did he say who?" She hesitated, just once. "No," she said, "but I guessed." Archie let that sit for a moment. "You guessed Nero Wolfe?" She nodded. "Yes, and that worried you?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because when people bring in men like Wolfe," June said quietly, "it means they expect consequences." Archie smiled thinly. "That's one way to put it." He flipped a page in his notebook. "You saw Daniel again that night?" "Yes," she said, shortly before the banquet ended. "Condition, focused," June said. "Not drunk, not confused, determined." "Did he mention the photographs?" "No," she said. "But he said, 'It's all documented now.' And then he went to speak with Father Caleb," June said. "After that, I didn't see him alive again." Archie closed his notebook. "You didn't tell the police any of this?" "No," she said. "Not yet." "Why tell me?" June met his eyes steadily. "Because I don't think Daniel died of coincidence, and because I don't think the police are looking in the right order." That's a risky opinion, Archie said. She shrugged. I'm a musician. I know when something's out of key. Archie stood. One last question. Yes. Why didn't you take copies of the photographs? June smiled faintly. Because Daniel was careful. He trusted no one completely. And now he's dead, Archie said. Yes, she replied. Which means someone was very afraid of what he found. Archie left her apartment with more weight than he had brought in. When he reported to me, he did so without flourish. He laid the facts out cleanly, the way June Weller herself had delivered them. She's steady, Archie finished. Too steady to be lying. If she rehearsed anything, it was honesty. That, I said, is often the most convincing performance. Daniel photographed documents, Archie went on. Ledger pages, transfers, and he argued with Owen Pike hours before the banquet. Yes, I said, which places Pike under additional strain. And the ledger vanished afterward, Archie added. Indeed, I said, a predictable response. Archie frowned. You think Pike did it? I think, I said, that Owen Pike had motive to remove evidence. Whether he also had motive to remove Daniel Hart is another matter. And June? Archie asked. She observed, I said. She did not intervene. That suggests confidence. Or distance, Archie said. Distance, I agreed, is often a form of protection. Archie hesitated. Her hands never shook. No, I said, and that is important. Because, Archie asked. Because, I replied. People who have just learned the truth usually display excitement or fear. People who have known it for some time display control. Archie smiled faintly. You think she's been sitting on this? Yes, I said. And now she has decided the time is right to tell us. To tell me, I corrected. You are a delivery system. He grinned. I always wanted to be infrastructure. I leaned back, fitting the pieces together. Daniel Hart had documented wrongdoing. Owen Pike had argued with him. The ledger had vanished. Lydia Hart had needed my name, and June Weller had watched it all with a musician's patience, waiting for the moment the harmony collapsed. Daniel was not killed for suspicion, I said. He was killed for proof. Archie nodded, and somebody panicked. Yes, I said, and panic is rarely tidy. I closed my eyes briefly. The circle was tightening, and the hatred inside it was no longer subtle. Tell June Weller, I said, to remain available. For what? Archie asked. For the truth, I said. She has practiced it long enough. The choir director had sung her part softly, precisely, and without embellishment. Now it was time to see who had been singing out of tune, and who had decided silence was safer than harmony. Chapter 8. The photograph that won't stay buried. Archie brought the photograph to me as one brings a bad smell into a clean room. Carefully, reluctantly, and with an apology already prepared. He did not hand it to me at first. He laid it on the corner of my desk, weighted it with a paper knife, and then stepped back as if it might move on its own. Found it behind St. Bridget's, he said. Waste bin in the alley, bottom layer. Someone tried to drown it, tear it, and forget it. I regarded it without touching it. The strip had once been part of a longer series, phone photographs printed cheaply perforated at the edges, the kind produced by drugstore machines that promise convenience and deliver mediocrity. It had been torn in half, then torn again, then soaked until the ink bled and the paper softened. Whoever had attempted its destruction had been impatient. They had also been unsuccessful. You retrieved this personally, I said. Archie nodded. I know your rule. Yes, I said. And you broke it. I did, Archie said. Because this didn't feel like something that should wait for gloves. I allowed myself a fractional nod. Proceed. The image was damaged, but not obliterated. 3 elements remained stubbornly legible, as if they had conspired to survive. A ledger page, a signature, and a withdrawal slip. The ledger page was unmistakable, lined, numbered, and stamped with St. Bridget's Church's seal at the top. Several entries had been blurred by water damage, But the column headings remained, and so did one line item, boxed in pencil. The withdrawal slip was clearer, protected perhaps by a fold or a stroke of luck. The amount was visible. It was not small, and the signature, though smeared at the edges, was legible enough to offend me. "Lydia Hart," I said. Archie exhaled. "Yeah." I closed my eyes briefly, not in despair, but in confirmation. There are moments in an investigation when probability collapses into certainty with all the drama of a quiet click. This was one of them. "The amount," Archie said, "could buy a lot of discretion." "Yes," I said, "and a great deal of silence." Archie shifted his weight. "Daniel photographed this, or something like it. June Weller said so." "Yes," I said, "and someone found the photographs." "Pike?" Archie asked. "Possibly," I said, "but do not assume the obvious culprit is the correct one. Panic produces efficiency, not intelligence." Archie frowned. "You think Lydia found it?" "I think Lydia Hart had the most to lose," I said, "which means she also had the most incentive to act quickly." "But the photo was in the alley," Archie said, "near where Daniel died." "Yes," I said, which suggests an interruption. Archie nodded slowly. "Someone tried to destroy the evidence, got spooked, and ditched it." "Precisely," I said. "If Lydia Hart had intended to dispose of it carefully, it would not be here." "So someone else," Archie said. "Or Lydia Hart," I said, acting under pressure. I rose and paced once behind my desk, careful to keep my hands behind my back. I do not handle evidence unless compelled. Patterns do not require fingerprints. "Daniel Hart was not killed for money alone," I said. Archie looked at me sharply. "Because the money was already gone." "Yes," I said, "or at least temporarily misplaced. But money can be returned. Reputation cannot." Archie's eyes narrowed. "Timing." "Precisely," I said. Daniel Hart threatened exposure at the worst possible moment. "The banquet," Archie said. "The letter," I said. "My name." He nodded. "If Daniel went public after that, then the scrutiny would have been immediate and unforgiving," I finished. "Charitable funds attract attention only after someone questions them." Daniel Hart intended to ask loudly. Archie was quiet for a moment. "So he wasn't killed to stop theft. He was killed to stop embarrassment." "Do not minimize it," I said. "Embarrassment ruins careers, ruins marriages, ruins carefully maintained narratives." "And Lydia's narrative," Archie said, "was already cracking." "Yes," I said. "She needed legitimacy. Quickly. My letter provided it." Archie winced. "You hate being useful." "I hate being misused," I corrected him. He gestured at the photograph. "This is enough to hang her." "No," I said. "It is enough to frighten her." "Same difference," Archie said. "No," I said patiently. "Fear produces mistakes. Evidence produces conclusions. We are not finished." Archie sighed. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "we wait for the photograph's absence to be noticed." He blinked. "You think someone knows it's missing?" "Undoubtedly," I said. "People who destroy evidence count their failures. And when they realize it didn't stay buried," Archie said slowly, "they'll move." "Yes," I said, "either to recover it or to silence whoever might have it." Archie glanced at the door. "Us, specifically," I said. "Me?" He grinned without humor. "Good thing you don't go out." "Yes," I agreed, "and good thing you do." I returned to my chair and regarded the ruined photograph again. It was an inelegant thing, torn, soaked, clumsy. But truth does not require elegance, it requires survival. "Daniel Hart," I said quietly, "misjudged one thing." "What?" Archie asked. "The pace," I said. "He believed he had time." Archie nodded. "And someone decided he didn't." "Yes," I said. "Because timing, Archie, is the only commodity more valuable than money." I reached for the telephone. "Prepare the office," I said. We are approaching the moment when people stop pretending. Archie smiled thinly. I always enjoy that part. So do I said. It is when the truth finally insists on being heard, whether anyone is ready or not. The photograph had failed to stay buried, and neither, I suspected, would the lie it exposed. Chapter 9. The kind man with a dirty thumbprint, Owen Pike, arrived at the brownstone, looking like a man who had spent the morning negotiating with his conscience and losing ground. He was careful, I would give him that. Careful enough to knock, careful enough to wait until Archie invited him in, careful enough to smile with his mouth, while his eyes measured the room for exits. But no amount of care can disguise perspiration, and Pike was sweating through his collar while pretending he was not. Archie showed him to the chair opposite my desk. Pike sat down quickly, as if standing required too much balance. He clasped his hat in both hands, knuckles pale, and tried to appear grateful. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, "thank you for seeing me. You did not request an appointment." I said. "You announced one." He swallowed. "I thought it best to come directly." "That," I replied, "is rarely best. Speak." He drew a breath that did not reach his lungs. "Daniel Hart tried to blackmail Bridget's church." Archie's eyebrows lifted. Mine did not. "An ambitious opening," I said. "Continue." "He accused us, me, Father Caleb, of financial impropriety," Pike went on. "He said, if we didn't cooperate, he would destroy Bridget's church's reputation." "Cooperate how?" Archie asked. Pike shifted in his chair. He wanted assurances, access, answers he wasn't entitled to. "And Father Caleb?" I asked. "He was devastated," Pike said quickly. "Daniel threatened to smear him, to suggest moral misconduct." I watched Pike carefully. His voice was steady, but his hands were not. They worried the brim of his hat, as if it were something alive. "You are alleging blackmail," I said. "What proof did Daniel Hart offer?" "He said he had documents," Pike replied. "Photos." "Which documents?" Archie asked. "Ledger pages," Pike said at once. Too quickly, "transfer slips, internal records." I inclined my head slightly. "You are very specific." Pike flushed. "I'm the treasurer. I know what exists." "Indeed," I said. "You know what should exist." He missed the emphasis. "Daniel was unstable," Pike continued. "Angry," he accused Lydia Hart of manipulating funds. He accused me of covering for her. "And were you?" I asked. "No," Pike said immediately. "Absolutely not." "Then Daniel Hart threatened exposure without leverage," I said. "An odd strategy." "He was desperate," Pike said. "He was drinking." "You mentioned drinking earlier," Archie said mildly. "So did Mrs. Hart, yet no one saw him drink that night." Pike hesitated. "He drank before." "Where?" Archie asked. "At home," Pike said, "or elsewhere." "Which?" Archie asked. Pike opened his mouth, closed it, and tried again. "I don't know." "From whom?" I asked. "From suspicion," Pike said. "The police are circling. They don't understand the complexity of church finances." "They understand theft," Archie said. "There was no theft," Pike insisted. "Everything was accounted for." "Temporarily," I said. He stiffened. "Excuse me." "Funds move through auxiliary accounts," I said. "Short, term loans, collateral. Does that terminology sound familiar?" Pike's face drained of color, then flushed again. "That was administrative." "Administrative concealment," I said. "A dangerous hobby." "It was approved," Pike said. "By the trust." "By whom?" Archie asked. Pike hesitated. "By Mrs. Hart and Father Caleb," I asked. "He trusted us," Pike said. "He didn't understand the mechanics." "Convenient," Archie murmured. Pike straightened. "Daniel threatened to expose all of it. He said he'd go to the press. He said he'd ruin Father Caleb. And so he died," I said. Pike recoiled. "I didn't kill him." "I did not accuse you," I said. "I am observing sequence." He swallowed hard. I came to you because you understand discretion. I understand truth, I corrected him. Discretion is a side effect. Pike leaned forward, desperation breaking through his careful exterior. Daniel Hart was dangerous. Not just to us. To the people who depended on St. Bridget's Church. A scandal would have destroyed donations. And a corpse would not, Archie asked. Pike flinched. I didn't mean. I know what you meant, I said. You meant that you feared exposure more than death. Silence settled, thick and uncomfortable. Mr. Pike, I said finally, tell me about the vault. His eyes widened. Just a fraction enough. The vault, he repeated. Yes, I said. The combination, the schedule, who opens it and when. Pike hesitated, then spoke too quickly. I handle it. Usually, Lydia Hart knows the combination. Father Caleb has a key for emergencies. The vault is opened on Mondays and Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays if there's an event. And the inner latch, I asked. He blinked. What about it? Who touches it last? Archie asked. The person who opens it, Pike said automatically, then stopped. I smiled thinly. You cradle details like a man rocking a child. Innocent men do not. Pike pushed back his chair slightly. This is absurd. Is it? I asked. You know the vault's habits intimately. You know what was photographed. You know what disappeared. And you arrived here uninvited to accuse a dead man. Pike stood. I don't have to listen to this. No, I said, but you should. Archie's voice cut in, quiet and precise. Inspector Kramer had the vault checked this morning. Pike froze. They dusted the inner latch, Archie went on. Funny thing about that latch, only the last person to open the vault ever touches it. Pike's mouth opened. No sound came out. Your thumbprint was there, Archie said, clean and clear. The room seemed to shrink. That's impossible, Pike whispered. I didn't. You opened the vault after the banquet, I said, after Daniel Hart threatened exposure, after he photographed the evidence. You went back to erase proof. No, Pike said weakly. You panicked, I said, and panic made you careless. Archie folded his arms. The question is whether panic also made you violent. Pike's knees buckled. He dropped back into the chair, his hat rolling to the floor. I didn't kill him, he said. I swear it. I believe you, I said. He looked up, startled. You do? Yes, I said. You are a coward, not a murderer. Archie nodded slowly. The killing was too controlled. Pike sagged. Lydia, he whispered. She told me to fix it, to clean it up. After, I asked. After Daniel confronted her, Pike said. After he said he'd expose everything. She was terrified. And so were you, I said. Yes, he said. But she was angry. Anger. That fit. Mr. Pike, I said. You will now leave this office. He stared at me. What? You will go directly to Inspector Kramer, I said. You will tell him exactly what you told us. Nothing more, nothing less. And if I don't, he asked. Then, I said, your cowardice will become criminal. He nodded numbly and left without another word. When the door closed, Archie exhaled. The kind man, he said, with the dirty thumbprint. Yes, I said, a classic specimen. Archie frowned. So Pike cleaned the vault, but Lydia had motive, access and temper, I finished, and Daniel Hart threatened her at precisely the wrong moment. Archie's jaw tightened. We're ready. Yes, I said, we are. I reached for the telephone. Summon them, I said, all of them. Archie smiled, sharp and anticipatory. Office gathering. Indeed, I said. It is time to stop circling and begin concluding. The truth was no longer hiding. It was merely waiting for its proper introduction. Chapter 10. The shape of the trap. The office gathering did not feel dramatic, and that was exactly as it should have been. Drama is the refuge of uncertainty. Conclusions, when they are correct, arrive quietly. They do not announce themselves with raised voices or theatrical gestures. They arrive when resistance has worn thin and denial has exhausted its usefulness. By the time Inspector Kramer and the others assembled in my office, the case had already finished arguing with itself. What remained was explanation. Kramer arrived first, heavy with impatience and suspicion, his notebook already open as if he feared memory might betray him if he delayed. He took the chair nearest my desk, planted his feet, and fixed me with a stare that suggested he intended to leave with more than he had brought. Lydia Hart followed a few minutes later. She was dressed in black again, of course, but this time the fabric seemed less armor and more habit. Her grief was still present, but it had stiffened into something brittle, something that cracked rather than bent. She sat carefully, hands folded, eyes forward. Father Caleb came next, pale and rigid, his coat buttoned too tightly. He carried resignation now, instead of fear, and there was a certain dignity in that. He chose a chair near the edge of the room, as if proximity itself were a moral choice. June Weller entered without hesitation. She took a chair near the wall, back straight, hands resting easily in her lap. She looked exactly as Archie had described her. Soft, voiced, sharp-eyed, and entirely unafraid of what truth might sound like when spoken aloud. Owen Pike arrived last. He hesitated in the doorway, just long enough to register every face in the room, and then came in as if momentum might carry him where willpower could not. He looked smaller than he had the day before. Men often do when the story they have been telling themselves finally collapses under its own weight. Archie closed the door softly, leaned against it, and folded his arms. His grin was gone. That pleased me. "Good," I said. "Let's hear it." "You shall," I replied. "But first understand this. Nothing about Daniel Hart's death was random. The error everyone has made, Polis included, was assuming chaos. The truth was orderly, and order leaves tracks." I rose slowly, not for effect, but to remove the possibility of interruption. Sitting invites debate, standing invites listening. "The night of the holiday banquet," I began, "has been remembered as noisy, crowded, confused. That memory is false. It was structured, predictable, which makes it exploitable." I gestured slightly toward Archie. "Mr. Goodwin rebuilt the evening, the way one rebuilds a street map," I continued, "by marking where everyone was, and more importantly, where they could not have been." Archie nodded once and spoke, his voice level and precise. "The banquet itself was public, loud, continuous. Daniel Hart argued with his wife earlier in the evening. That's established afterward. He asked Father Caleb for a private conversation in the back corridor. Father Caleb inclined his head. Yes, after that conversation," Archie went on, "Daniel Hart was alive. That point matters," I said, resuming, "because it fixes the beginning of our window." I allowed my gaze to move across the room without settling, letting the silence do some of the work. Father Caleb then stepped away to settle a minor argument in St. Bridget's church office, verified by witnesses. June Weller went to the storage room to return choir robes. She was seen entering and leaving. Lydia Hart was observed in public areas, asking after her husband. Lydia's chin lifted slightly. She did not speak. "All of that," I said, "accounts for movement." "Witnessed movement." I paused, then turned deliberately toward Owen Pike. "One person," I said, "cannot account for 20 minutes. Pike's throat worked. He stared at his hands as though they belonged to someone else. 20 minutes, I repeated, during which Daniel Hart disappeared from public view. Kramer leaned forward. "You're saying Pike has no alibi?" "I am saying more than that," I replied. "I am saying those minutes were expensive." Archie stepped forward. Daniel Hart had photographs, ledger pages, withdrawal slips, signed documents. June Weller's eyes flicked briefly toward Pike, then returned to me. "He confronted someone with those photographs," I said, "and he did not confront Lydia Hart." Lydia stiffened. "That's absurd." "Silence," I said mildly. "You were frightened, Mrs. Hart. Not violent. You needed legitimacy, not a corpse." Her mouth closed. The words had found their mark. The man who understood vault schedules, inner latches, donation timing. The man who knew exactly how damaging those photographs were. Pike's hands were trembling now, openly. Owen Pike, I said, was St. Brigid's church treasurer. He was also the man Daniel Hart argued with earlier that afternoon, loudly in the treasurer's office. That argument was overheard. It concerned money. Pike shook his head weakly. He was blackmailing us. Yes, I said, and you panicked. Archie took over again. Daniel met you privately. He showed you the photographs. He told you what he planned to do. Go public, involve outside scrutiny, make the fund impossible to quietly manage. Kramer's voice cut in. And then what? And then, I said, the sequence broke. Pike lurched to his feet. No. You did not plan murder, I said calmly. You confronted him in anger. What followed destroyed your control. The silence that followed was not dramatic, it was heavy. You did not intend what followed, I continued, but intent does not reverse consequence. Pike collapsed back into his chair, his face gray, his shoulders sagging as though gravity had finally asserted itself. You then behaved exactly as your nature dictates, I said. You cleaned, you erased. You removed the ledger, you attempted to destroy the photographs. Archie nodded. That's where your thumbprint came from, the inner latch, only touched by the last person to open it. Kramer shifted in his chair, watching closely. Pike's shoulders shook. I didn't mean to, he whispered. That, I said, is never the defense people expect it to be. June Weller spoke quietly, her voice steady. Daniel trusted evidence, she said. He didn't trust people. Yes, I said, and that was his only miscalculation. Father Caleb bowed his head, lips moving soundlessly. Lydia Hart stared straight ahead, the truth finally relieving her of the need to perform. Fear had driven her actions, not violence, but fear had chosen the wrong instrument. Kramer said nothing, his expression unreadable. Pike said nothing. Terror and relief warred briefly, unresolved. When they were gone, Archie closed the door again and leaned against it, exhaling, but not satisfied. Well, he said, so much for holiday cheer. The banquet, I said, returning to my desk, was not what killed Daniel Hart. Archie raised an eyebrow. Timing did. I finished. He confronted the wrong man at the precise moment. Fear outweighed restraint. Archie nodded, and paid for it. Yes, I said. Charity is a noble pretext. Fear is a better one. Violence is the last refuge of men who believe they are cornered. The room emptied, order returned. Outside, the city continued preparing for holidays that would arrive on schedule, indifferent to the quiet justice already served. Lights would be strung, food would be served, and people would congratulate themselves on goodwill accomplished. I sat back in my chair, the familiar weight of routine settling comfortably around me once more. The case is narrowing, Archie said. Yes, I replied, and now I will reclaim my evening. He smiled. Until the next small favor. I looked at him. He stopped smiling. Chapter 11. The trap with a ribbon on it. The trap was simple. I have never trusted elaborate devices when human nature will do the work more efficiently. Complicated traps break. Simple ones rely on habits, and habits are dependable. People behave predictably when fear is applied in the correct measure and at the correct moment. I applied both, with restraint and with confidence born of repetition. I instructed Archie to extend the invitations. He did so with tact, which is to say, he lied politely, fluently, and with an air of reluctant cooperation that suggested he was doing everyone a favor he would rather not be doing at all. Archie told them I believed the missing donation ledger could still be recovered discreetly, before Inspector Kramer decided to turn a regrettable misunderstanding into a public scandal. He hinted that time was the enemy and discretion the only remaining ally. He used words like containment, resolution, and before morning. He did not overplay it. Archie rarely does. The trick is to suggest urgency without specifying consequence. Minds do the rest. They came. They always do. Lydia Hart arrived first, precisely on time. She was dressed impeccably in black that had crossed the boundary from mourning into uniform. Her grief had hardened into something brittle and controlled, worn like a fitted coat she refused to remove. Her eyes were alert, moving quickly as she entered, scanning the room not for comfort, but for leverage. She chose her seat carefully, as if placement alone could influence outcome. She sat straight, backed, hands folded, chin high, composure practiced to the point of reflex. June Weller followed a few minutes later. She removed her coat calmly, acknowledged Lydia with a brief glance, then looked at me. She chose a chair that gave her an unobstructed view of everyone, and sat with ease, spine straight, hands resting loosely in her lap. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were not. They narrowed slightly, the way a musician's do when a note rings false, and the source has yet to reveal itself. She had the patience of someone who knows the measure will resolve if allowed to play out. Father Caleb arrived next, hat in hand, murmuring a prayer he did not quite finish. He looked smaller than before, as though the past days had taken something tangible from him. He sat heavily, shoulders slumped, and clasped his hands together as if afraid they might begin to tremble if he released them. He did not look at Lydia. He did not look at Pike. He looked at the floor and accepted it. Owen Pike came last. That, too, was instructive. He entered quickly, paused just long enough to register every face in the room, and then sat with a stiffness that suggested preparation rather than comfort. He was sweating again. Not dramatically, not enough to draw casual notice, but enough to matter. I noticed. He folded his hands together, then separated them, then folded them again, never quite finding rest. He kept his eyes on my desk, as if the furniture itself were a witness he did not trust. Archie closed the door and leaned against it. His grin was absent. That was appropriate. "Thank you for coming," I said. "This will not take long. By the time people are summoned to a trap, the work has already been done. What remains is reaction, and reaction is quicker than denial. I have reason to believe," I continued, "that the missing donation ledger can be recovered quietly." Lydia exhaled softly, too softly. The sound escaped her before she could restrain it. She corrected herself with a small movement of the shoulders, as if straightening the coat of grief back into place. "It would be best," I went on, "for everyone concerned if Inspector Kramer were spared further provocation." Pike nodded, too quickly. His chin dipped and rose before he could stop it, like a reflex exposed to light. June said nothing. Silence, in her case, was deliberate. She had learned long ago that words distract from the rhythm of truth. Father Caleb whispered something under his breath and pressed his palms together more tightly. His lips moved, but the prayer was not for guidance. It was for endurance. Archie stepped forward and placed a small envelope on the corner of my desk. It was unremarkable. Manila, thin, ordinary, which made it effective. People fear drama. They trust the mundane. The envelope was a promise without decoration. The photograph, I said, touching the envelope lightly, was more resilient than anticipated. Lydia's eyes flicked to it at once. Her mouth went dry. She swallowed and did not bother pretending she had not. The movement was quick, involuntary, like a tell she had not practiced away. "I had it enhanced," I said calmly, clarified. This was untrue. It did not matter. Fear does not verify claims. It accepts them as long as they fit a plausible threat. "The ledger page is readable," I continued. "The withdrawal amount unmistakable. The signature conclusive." June's eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in calculation. She was adjusting her internal map, reweighting probabilities, placing people where they belonged. She had been doing that since the night Daniel died. Father Caleb closed his eyes. Pike shifted in his chair, the sound of fabric against wood suddenly loud. He glanced at the door, then at Archie, then back to the envelope. "I intend," I said, "to provide copies to Inspector Kramer by morning." Silence followed. Not the comfortable kind, the humming kind that fills the ears and makes small sounds feel dangerous. The house itself seemed to listen. "You are welcome," I added, "to prevent that." Owen Pike stood up. Too fast, his chair scraped sharply against the floor, the sound cutting through the silence like a snapped string. He froze, realizing the error, then attempted poorly to recover his balance and his composure. His hands hovered in the air, unsure where to land. I don't understand," he said. "Why would?" "Sit down," I said. He did not. Men rise quickly when the floor turns to fire. It is instinctive. It is also revealing. The body answers questions the mouth has not yet formed. "Mr. Pike," I said, "your concern is premature." June leaned back slightly now, her attention fixed on him with the cool focus of someone watching a problem finally declare itself. She did not move to help him. She did not move at all. Lydia swallowed again. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Wolfe?" "I am suggesting," I said, "that the ledger did not disappear by accident, nor was it removed for St. Brigid's Church's benefit." Pike's breathing was audible now, shallow and irregular. He licked his lips and tried to speak. Failed, tried again. "You removed it," I said, "after Daniel Hart photographed it." "That's a lie," Pike said hoarsely. His voice cracked on the last word. "No," I replied, "it is a sequence." Archie spoke for the first time. "You're the only one who knew exactly what to remove and where it was kept." Father Caleb looked up sharply. "Owen," Pike's head snapped toward him, "I was protecting St. Brigid's Church." "And yourself," June Weller said quietly. Pike turned on her. "You don't understand." "I understand timing," she replied. "And fear. Both are audible when you listen." Lydia rose slowly to her feet, her movements careful now, calculated. She had decided, too late, that proximity to action was safer than distance. "If anyone here destroyed evidence," she said, "it wasn't Owen. That was badly chosen." "Sit down, Mrs. Hart," I said. "This does not concern you anymore." Her eyes flashed. "Daniel accused me." "Yes," I said. "Because you authorized the withdrawals, but you did not kill him." She stared at me, stunned, the certainty she had carried collapsing without ceremony. For a moment, she looked very tired. "You needed legitimacy," I continued, "not violence." Mr. Pike needed silence. Pike's hands clenched until his knuckles whitened. "The photographs frightened you," I said. "Exposure would have ruined your careful balance. Your accounts, your reputation, your control. When Daniel confronted you privately, you panicked." "I didn't," Pike began. "You struck him," I said. "Not to kill, to stop him talking." Father Caleb gasped and covered his mouth. He fell. I went on. "He struck his head. The snow concealed the rest. You ran." Pike backed toward the door, a step at a time, eyes wide. Archie shifted his weight. "Bad idea." Pike stopped. "You went back later," I said. "To clean up what fear had missed. You removed the ledger. You tried to destroy the photographs. You returned to the vault carelessly." I let the silence stretch until it became unbearable. The kind of silence that forces truth to occupy the space words have abandoned. "The inner latch," I said. "Your thumbprint was still there." Pike sagged, the fight draining out of him as though someone had opened a valve. His shoulders slumped, his hands dropped to his sides. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "That," I said, "is irrelevant." June closed her eyes briefly, not in relief, but in finality, as if the last discordant note had finally resolved. Father Caleb crossed himself. Lydia sank back into her chair, her composure finally abandoned, the tailored grief slipping from her shoulders like something too heavy to keep wearing. Archie opened the door. Inspector Kramer stood in the hallway. He had been listening, which did not surprise me. Curiosity is a professional failing he has never quite overcome, and in this case it served him well. Pike did not resist this time. He did not speak. Relief had replaced terror, the relief of a man who no longer has to pretend the floor is solid beneath him. Kramer took him by the arm and guided him out without ceremony. When they were gone, the brownstone settled back into itself, the way it always does when disorder has been escorted out. The silence that followed was companionable, the kind earned rather than imposed. Archie closed the door and exhaled. "Nice ribbon." "Yes," I said. "People trust traps that look festive." He glanced at the window, where a few early holiday lights across the street blinked with determined cheer. "Funny thing," he said. "Everybody thought this was about goodwill." "Most crimes are," I replied. "They merely disagree about whose." He smiled faintly. "Men rise fast when the floor turns to fire." "Indeed," I said. "And that is when you learn exactly where they were standing." I returned to my desk, the familiar comfort of order reasserting itself. Upstairs, the orchids waited, precise and demanding, unimpressed by human drama. Fritz would soon ask about dinner. The city would proceed with its rituals, wreaths, packages, and charitable intentions intact. The trap had worked, quietly, reliably, and without spectacle, just the way I prefer things to end neatly tied, like a ribbon that looks harmless until you remember what it was holding shut. Chapter 12. The name cleared, the holiday bruised Pike spoke the way men do when silence has finally failed them. It was not a single moment. It was a process. Confessions rarely arrive intact. They leak, they fracture, they begin with outrage and self-pity and work their way, reluctantly and without dignity, toward the truth. Inspector Kramer told me later that Pike started talking almost before he was properly seated, words tumbling out in a hurried defensive rush, as though velocity itself might substitute for innocence. It did not. He accused Lydia Hart first. He said she had been stealing donations, then corrected himself quickly, almost apologetically. Borrowing, he insisted. Temporary reallocations, short-term transfers through auxiliary accounts to cover obligations that had arrived too soon and demanded obedience. Failed ventures, investments that required immediate oxygen, or they would suffocate everything attached to them. Pike said Lydia promised the money would be returned. He said he believed her. Belief, in Pike's vocabulary, was simply the word he used for convenience. According to Pike, Daniel Hart discovered the transfers weeks before the holiday banquet. Pike said Daniel did not explode at once. He watched. He asked questions. He lingered in offices he had never cared about before. He looked at documents Pike had assumed were invisible to anyone who did not already understand them. Daniel had not arrived in anger, Pike said. He arrived in certainty. Certainty frightens careful men more than rage ever does. Daniel threatened exposure. Not privately, not discreetly, publicly. Pike said. Daniel spoke of auditors who would relish attention, of authorities who would not care about nuance, of reporters who would turn irregularities into headlines without bothering to understand the difference between mismanagement and malice. Daniel chose his moment with a precision that Pike found unforgivable before the holiday. Pike repeated that detail to Kramer as though it carried moral weight, as though timing itself might excuse what followed. He said it would destroy everything, Pike told him. The drive, the church donations would dry up overnight. He said if we didn't fix it, he'd go public. Fix it, Pike favored that phrase. It softened the brutality of what came next. It suggested adjustment rather than panic, maintenance rather than violence. Pike had spent his professional life fixing things, smoothing accounts, shifting figures just long enough to make problems disappear. He did not see the difference between correction and concealment until that difference stood in front of him and refused to move. According to Pike, Daniel left him no choice. Kramer let him talk. Pike admitted luring Daniel into the back corridor under the pretense of explanation numbers. Schedules, assurances that sounded reasonable to a man already angry and already convinced he was right. Pike said Daniel brought the photographs with him. Confident, almost careless, believing evidence was armor. It was not. The argument escalated. Pike said Daniel shouted. Pike said he shouted back. Pike said the corridor echoed, amplifying every word until it felt like the walls themselves were listening. He said the air felt hot and close, as though escape had become theoretical. Pike said he felt cornered. Pike said he saw red. The weapon, he insisted, was not planned. On that point, I believe him. A heavy brass candle base sat on a side table near the corridor, church property, polished by habit, weighted by tradition. Pike grabbed it without thinking. He struck Daniel once, hard enough to stop him talking, harder than he intended. Daniel fell. His head struck stone. After that, Pike said, everything became very quiet. The snow did the rest. Pike dragged Daniel into the alley, breathless and shaking, hands numb from cold and fear. He left Daniel face down, convincing himself, briefly, that the man might still be alive. Pike said he ran because standing still would have required thought, and thought was unbearable. Later, when panic exhausted itself into calculation, Pike returned. He removed the ledger. He tried to destroy the photographs. He planted my name, my address. A time, Pike admitted, he chose me deliberately, a famous target, a visible distraction, a name that would attract suspicion eagerly and hold it for longer than a nameless treasurer ever could. He hoped the police would savor the complication. He hoped attention would bloom outward instead of inward. He hoped to buy time. He underestimated two things, my patience and my dislike of being used. Kramer took him away without ceremony. Pike did not resist. He looked relieved, as though confession had finally allowed him to sit down after a vigil that had served no purpose, except prolonging fear. The performance was over. The role no longer required rehearsal, Father. Caleb wept. He did not restrain himself. He did not apologize for the sound. He folded inward, hands pressed to his face, grief, guilt, and faith colliding without resolution. Archie handed him a handkerchief. The priest took it, nodded once, and said nothing. Words had ceased to be useful. Lydia Hart did not weep. She sat very still, staring at nothing, her carefully constructed grief finally stripped of purpose. She would face consequences of her own, legal, financial, reputational. She had authorized theft and called it stewardship. She had needed legitimacy and borrowed mine to obtain it. She would not escape judgment, but she had not committed murder. That distinction mattered. Inspector Kramer lingered long enough to satisfy himself that the room held no further surprises. He regarded me with an expression that contained gratitude, irritation, and professional resignation in roughly equal measure. "Your name's clean," he said. "I have always found it so." I replied. He snorted. "Don't get used to it." He left. The brownstone settled into its familiar silence, the kind that does not ask questions or demand explanation. Outside, the city continued its preparations. Lights blinked. Packages were wrapped. Charitable intentions survived intact, if slightly bruised. Archie stood near the door, hands in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "I should have pushed harder," he said, "back when it was just a letter." "No," I replied. "You should have done exactly what you did. This was not caused by kindness, it was exposed by it." He nodded. But the shame lingered. Archie takes responsibility seriously, even when it is misplaced. I returned to my chair. Upstairs. The orchids would require attention. Fritz would have opinions about dinner. The holiday would arrive on schedule, indifferent to the damage done in its name. My dignity was repaired. My name was cleared. My patience, however, remained scarce. That, I have learned, is the proper condition in which to end a case.